in. I want to welcome everyone, and I want to apologize in advance for the noise in the background. I have some girls leaving for a vibe practice and dance team, and so we'll see what we get. But I want to welcome everyone to this affordable housing, our very first forum, this Why Affordable Housing. And we hope this is really the first in a series of dialogues that we hope to have with the town of Madison. I'm Sarah Mervine, and I'm the chair of the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee charged with doing the plan for affordable housing for Madison. It's a mouthful, our committee. And I'm very happy that you could join us today. And I see that many of our members of our committee are here today. And I want to just introduce them to you so that you know when you have questions later who you can ask. As I said, I'm the chair, and Erin Duquez, I don't know if I saw her, but she is the vice chair and is the liaison to the Board of Selectmen. We also have Andrea Aaron. Andrea is our representative from Madison Youth and Family Services. Wendy Oberg, who is the representative from the Senior Center. And yeah, if you want to just raise your hand so people can see you. Matthew Keller, who like me is a community member in Madison, interested in the subject. We have one more community member who wasn't able to be here tonight, Chad Greenlee. We excused him for his wedding. Otherwise, he will be back to talk affordable housing with you. We also have Peter Roos, who is our liaison to the, or our representative from Planning and Zoning, who's actually going to leave early to go to Planning and Zoning. And then we have Heather Noblin, who's helping us today. She's the liaison to the Senior Center and has helped this committee get formed. And we also have Crystal DePietro, who you will hear from today from Madison Youth and Family Services. So our group has come together, as you'll hear, to form the plan for Madison of how we're going to go forward and increase affordable housing in our area. And before we do anything, what we really want to do is hear from the community. And it's really important that we hear from all of you as to what your vision is and what's important to you. And today's forum is really to give you some idea of what we're talking about when we talk about affordable housing, what we have here in Madison right now. And so you'll hear from people who both run some of the affordable housing here, who both know some of the needs of affordable housing, and then you'll hear about what this means. And before I start, I do want to say I forgot to introduce one person because she's new but very helpful to this group, and that's Erin Mannix, who has just recently come on as the town planner. Is that the right title? Town planner, in place of Dave Anderson, for those of you who knew Dave. And we're really, really happy to have Erin aboard. So we're going to try to keep it to an hour. I do know that you're going to have questions, and we want to try to answer all your questions. We're going to ask that you hold your questions until the end, and then we will have time for everybody to get to your questions. If it's a question and you don't want to forget it, feel free to private chat it to me, and I will write it down. And if you feel you didn't get your question answered, we will give contact information, and we welcome you to contact us afterwards. So I think without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to David Fink. And I asked everyone for a bio. It reminded me of in elementary school when we had to grade ourselves. We were all very modest. We didn't want to say we deserved something great. And then the teacher would say, you know, you deserve something great. And all of our panelists gave me very modest bios about themselves. But we are really fortunate to have David Fink here today. David is currently a housing policy consultant for the South Central Region Council of Governments. For those of you who know it, SCROG, it's a mouthful. He's worked with municipalities, developers, and state government to help serve the affordable housing needs of individuals, families, the elderly, and the homeless for 18 years. He's principally worked as policy director for the Partnership for Strong Communities, and he's testified before the US Senate and the Connecticut General Assembly on all of these issues. For 27 years before that, he was a legislative reporter and a national correspondent for 5 newspapers, including 17 years at the Hartford Courant, where he was the political editor and associate editor of the editorial page. He currently teaches, on top of everything else, he currently teaches American government at CCSU, and he lives with his wife, who is a lawyer in West Hartford. So David is going to tell you everything you want to know about why affordable housing in just 20 minutes or under, right, David? So I turn it over to you, and thank you.
Well, thanks, Sarah. I'm good. I'm not sure I'm that good, but I'll do the best I can. And like Sarah said, please write down questions. And if you have questions afterwards, I'll stay as long as you want to answer those questions. And if I don't have the answers, I'll see if I can get them for you and forward them to you. I'm going to try. Heather was kind enough to do a dry run with me earlier today. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. So there is one part of it. Now I have to, wait a minute. Okay, now I want to share my screen, and I'm wondering now, can you all see that screen? Not totally, right? Okay, let me see what I can do here. Okay, wait a minute.
So far, we see the word magic, and we wish we could do some magic for you, David.
All right. Well, we're gonna make this work. So
maybe Heather could.
You want to try to switch it? That's better. Do you want to try to switch it to the slide view, or make the box smaller, and then we'll be able to?
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to try this one more time. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so down here, I'm going to share my screen, and still not great, right?
It's better than it was.
How's that? Better?
I think we have most of it. We can see most of it.
Okay, I think that's going to work. All right. Well, anyway, so tonight I said the magic is in not the mess, but the message. And that's what tonight's discussion is all about. It is about the idea that for this to work in Madison or any town, there has to be a discussion. There has to be the right message. Affordable housing is a great goal. It can be done. It can be done while preserving the wonderful town that Madison is, and a lot of towns around the state. The trick is to discuss it in the right way. There is really good information that needs to be shared. There has to be a community conversation. There needs to be misinformation that people are disabused of. There need to be a really concise and clear focus on the goals and the ways to get there. And you guys have already started. I am lucky enough to have met Sarah and other people on your committee. They know what they're doing. They know a lot about it. And so the trick is to expand that education around the town and to have a conversation where you get at not only the reasons to do this, but also the concerns that people have. And those are legitimate and they need to be talked about. And I will talk about that a little. Like I say here, I never tell a town what to do. It's not my place. I don't know enough about the town, but I can tell you and will tell you tonight about what other towns have done. And then it's up to you guys to decide what you want to do. So that's my wife's phone, and she'll turn it off in a second. Okay. Um, anyway, okay, there you go. So anyway, housing is vital, like I say, and it is controversial. And why is it controversial? Because, as you know, as all of you know, the check you wrote when you bought your house is probably the largest check you ever wrote in your life. And for a lot of people, everything is tied up in that house. Their family's security, their children's education, their retirement, everything. And so it's understandable why they have to give a lot of thought before they're going to allow their town to change and to allow other housing to be built. And they have been, unfortunately, affected by stereotypical images of what affordable and mixed income housing is, and images of who the people are who live in it. And so that has to get talked about. And we're going to talk about that a bit tonight. Housing is, the key to opportunity. It can, an affordable and appropriate home for people can, lead to great success and happiness. And but having the wrong place is going to be a real problem for people. So the right approach, as you know, is to talk about it. And your town is like a lot of other towns, well educated. 99% of the people are open-minded and thoughtful, but you're going to find some people who are going to be closed-minded and a little hard to convince. And like I said, they're guided by some stereotypes and fears, and you can't blame them. I think it's rational for people to decide, I'm afraid of what's going to happen if we allow change in our town. And that's why, for those of us who have taken behavioral psychology in college, that one of the focuses is on loss. People are afraid of loss. And in this case, they're afraid of losing the town, the quality of life, the wonderful situation that they have been able to accomplish. And they don't want to see that change. So you have to deal with that. And it's real. And you may find that you disagree with some of those people, but it's not irrational for them to be fearful. And they have to be talked to. And that's going to be the job of everyone on this call and all the people you talk to expand that conversation. So you got to be inclusive. It's your job to learn what the town has and what it needs, and most important, most of the time, is where to put it. You can build the housing that you need, but you have to do it in a way that is, people can agree upon is the right place. So it's got to fit the surroundings. It can't mess up traffic patterns. It can't mess up a neighborhood. It has, if it's going to be denser, it has to be in a place where density seems to work and infrastructure can support it. And those choices are vital. And that's the point. I've seen communities fail by not giving the community a choice. A committee has come up with an idea, we want to put it right here. And people say, I don't know if I want it there. And if there are no other alternatives, that's a problem. So, for those of us who have kids, it's a lot easier to say, honey, would you like the broccoli or the peas or the cauliflower? And give them some alternatives. And then, would you like ketchup with that or not? But I mean, people like choices. They don't like ultimatums. And so that's important. We're going to talk about the myths a little later. But there's good research and many examples to help people. You have to really get over a major hump, which is that a lot of people don't have perspective on who it is who needs to live in an income restricted unit that is restricted to people at 60 or 80% of the median income. A lot of people don't realize how little important workers good people make. The median income in Connecticut is about $78,000. That's not a lot of money. But the point is, half the households in the state make less than $78,000, and they're good people, and they're doing important jobs. And we have to, kind of keep in mind that, we all think we're middle class. We're not. We're probably all upper middle class. And we have to recognize that there are people who are doing important stuff. They're just not making a lot of money, and they need a good place to live. So again, the bottom line is, what is Madison or any town going to decide are their goals? Do you want people who are already living in town to not be burdened by their housing costs? And we'll talk about that in a second. Do you want to relieve and remove barriers for other people to move in? A lot of towns have talked about they want their police, their firefighters, their teachers, their nurses' aides to live in town. Others, are maybe lucky enough to live next to a town that has some of those people who can get by. I spoke about, it was really funny, about 5 or 6 years ago to John McKinney, who some of you may know, who was the former Republican leader of the state Senate, a wonderful guy. His dad was Stu McKinney, the congressman from the 4th District. And we talked one day about the fact that there was a snowstorm in the northern 2/3 of Connecticut. This was about 5 years ago in February, that just paralyzed the northern 2/3 of the state. The shoreline where Madison is, and Fairfield, where he's from, is got only rain. But Fairfield had to cancel school that day. And the reason was that all their teachers were driving from 5 or 6 towns away where it was snowing. So because they couldn't afford to live in Fairfield. So, those are the issues. Do you have the people in the town you need? We used to say at the Partnership for Strong Communities that healthy communities, strong communities need all sorts of people, and all sorts of people need all sorts of housing. So the right approach, you got to remember, housing is the foundation of opportunity, and it is connected to all these, but I'm not going to take a lot of time there. It is connected to educational success, environmental quality, transportation service. We can talk all about this later. The other thing I want you to keep in mind as we set out here is that you're not going to convince everyone. Sarah knows, because I've talked to her about this. I did some work. Guilford Foundation hired us about 5 or 6 years ago to work with Guilford. And we did a number of forums, and we did videos for them, and we did a questionnaire in town. And the questionnaire got 400 responses. And 350 of them were very supportive of creating new housing options in town. 50 of them were, like I say, unkind. People said some, very, very harsh things about it. But the point is that Joe Mazza, who was in the first selectman in Guilford, saw that a lot of people were supportive of this idea. And so that gave him and others confidence to move ahead. But I only underscore it to say, and Guilford has made progress. I only underscore it to say that you're not going to convince everyone. We have to be understanding. We have to be blameless. We have to really, truly try to understand people's objections. But we have to, recognize we're not going to convince everyone. So a bit about housing. I call it a tap water issue because when I go to wash my face and brush my teeth in the morning, I turn on the water, it comes, and it got there, and I have no idea how it got there. And that's the same thing for housing. A lot of people don't think about it because most people are satisfied with their housing situation. Most people can afford their housing, and it's there for them. Whatever they need, it's there. It's only when it's not there that suddenly you realize, well, you turn the tap and the water doesn't come. And that frequently happens with divorced parents where, dad has to move out, but he wants to see the kids on Wednesday night and every other weekend. He wants to get an apartment in town. And you realize there are no apartments in town, or employers who need workers, and suddenly there are no workers in town because they can't afford to live in town, and they're going to go, they live in an adjoining town, they're going to go work someplace else. I also say that everyone cares about housing, they just don't know they care about it because, again, people don't think about it. It's not a front burner issue, even though it's the largest part of most families' budgets. But we'll get to that in a second. So the point here is that towns have interest in this. Needless to say, if you build the kind of housing that the market wants, you're going to get property tax revenue. You're going to attract to town if you build 1, 2, 3 bedroom multifamily units, condos, future buyers. I just spoke to Woodbridge the other night. They have a problem because their grand list is flattened a lot, and they don't have a lot of ways to attract young people to the town unless they can immediately take 8 rungs up the ladder and buy one of the expensive homes in Woodbridge. Well, the way to attract future buyers is to, get a young family to come and get a 2-bedroom apartment or a condo, and then they learn to love the town. They find a dock and a dentist and a church or a synagogue or a mosque, and they make friends and they get into a school and they decide they love Madison and they're going to buy there. And that adds to buyers who are going to bid up the price of housing in the town. You're going to increase shoppers for merchants. You're going to provide key workers for important jobs. And needless to say, if you have people who are living on the edge, if they can't make the rent for one reason or another, and we'll talk about that in a minute, suddenly you have pressure on the police and social services, the food pantry, etc. Why do towns seek to create more income restricted units? The residents' interests are you want to allow elderly to age in place. There are a lot of people who don't want to go to a nursing home. But if they don't want to go to a nursing home, it means that they have to have a nurse's aide who's going to be able to get to their home. And without a lot of public transit or without a car, you need to have the nurse's aide living in the town. A lot of towns want children after college and graduate school to come back home and live in the town that they grew up in. The parents want to see their kids on, every Sunday, not just on Christmas and Easter. You want to provide opportunity for those who want to live in town. Like we said, if you want your police, your firefighters, your teachers, your EMTs to live in town, you have to do that. And more, there are a lot of people, baby boomers, who want to downsize and they don't want to rake the leaves and shovel the snow anymore. And they want to sell their home, but they want to stay in the town with their friends and their family. And like I say, their church and their dock are. So those are the residents' interests. Like I said, if housing's too expensive, that's really bad. And we're going to get to this in a minute about how expensive it is. It's really bad for those people. It's also bad for the economy. Local merchants are not going to sell as much because people are going to have less disposable income. And it's bad for the municipalities because municipalities are suddenly going to have empty storefronts because stores are not going to be able to stay in business. They're not going to do enough business. A little bit about Connecticut's housing situation. We have the ignominious distinction of being sixth in the nation in median monthly housing costs. Prices here are very, very expensive. Part of the reason for that is we are second in Gini coefficient. That's I won't get into the depths of that, but that's a measure of wealth disparity. And in Connecticut, like anywhere, if you have wealthy people, they tend to drive up the costs of all goods and services, including housing, because they can afford to pay them. And that's a problem for people on the lower end of the spectrum because they have to pay those prices. So that's a problem in Connecticut as well. And that's why housing is not only expensive, but a lot of people are burdened by their housing costs. What do we mean by burdened by their housing costs? If you were like me, when you were getting your first apartment, your parents said to you, don't spend more than 25% of your monthly income on rent. HUD puts it at 30%. So people who are spending more than 30% of their income are thought to be burdened by their housing costs, meaning that they don't have a lot left over for food, clothing, transportation, healthcare, childcare, all the other things that people need. And in Connecticut, statewide, 48% of the renters and 32% of the homeowners are burdened by their housing costs. Another interesting point is the National Income Housing Coalition every year looks at every state and decides what the housing wage is in that state. And that's what you have to earn per hour to afford a typical 2-bedroom apartment in the state. In Connecticut, the housing wage is $27 and change per hour, or about $56,000, $57,000 a year for an individual. I went down the Department of Labor website. Believe it or not, I didn't believe it at first. There are more than 680 occupations in Connecticut, and half of them, or about almost half of them, don't make the housing wage. So again, this again is an issue of us having perspective about who the people are in Connecticut, who the workers are, what they get paid, and what they can afford. We don't have the housing stock that we need, and that's the clipped part of that slide. And that is because of the way we developed. 2/3 of the towns in Connecticut built the bulk of their housing from 1970 on. Why is that? Because baby boomers were then in their 20s. They all wanted a single family home, and a developer would buy a 40-acre cornfield and put up 40 McMansions or 40 colonials and sell them in about 4 weeks, and everybody was happy. And that's the way Connecticut grew primarily. The cities, were building, homes for 300 years, but most of the suburbs were building single-family homes, bulk of which began in 1970. And so as a result, about 3/4 of the town and the state have very skewed housing stock. About 70% or more, some 80, some 90% have only single-family homes. And so a lot of towns don't have those lower rungs on the ladder for people to get into town. A 1, 2, 3 bedroom rental, a condo, and so and a lot of them, don't have transit. I mean, Madison is very, very lucky to have a Shoreline East stop, and a lot of towns around the state, there are 43 that have mass transit stations, are looking to build housing near transit. It makes a lot of sense for those people. A lot of people don't want to own a car. If they want to go skiing on the weekend, they'll get a zip car to go up to Vermont, and if they're walkable to the station, they can get on the train and work in New Haven or Stanford or even New York City. And Madison is lucky enough to have that. And so if Madison is like other towns, they'll probably consider housing near their station. Those are places where more density is very palatable to the people living there. And like I say, there are a number of towns that are taking a look at this. This is not an exhaustive list. Old Saybrook is one. They put 186 units right near their train station. They made 20% of them income restricted for people at 80% of median income, about 37 of the units. And, they all rented very, very quickly. This was a huge demand in Old Saybrook, like a lot of these towns. Again, Connecticut's current housing situation. Overall, the average household in the nation spends 32% of their income on housing, 19% on transportation. You can't see the rest of it. It's about 6 to 12% on energy. So housing is the largest part of the budget. There are 30 municipalities in the state. Madison is not one of them, that where 10% or more of the housing stock is income restricted. Those tend to be the cities and some first-rank suburbs. Unfortunately, these are places with low resource schools and fewer vital services. This is an important number, and I want to talk to you about this. Some of you may be familiar with the United Way of Connecticut's ALICE study. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. It's what we used to call households that are working poor. These are people who are getting it all done. They're going to work, they're taking care of their families, they're paying the rent or the mortgage payment, but they're living on the edge. What United Way found in the ALICE study was that there was a survival budget in Connecticut. In other words, what you needed to meet all the basic needs without a whole lot of going out to eat or going to the movies. It's $28,000 a year for an individual, $32,000 a year for an elderly person, and $90,000 a year for a household of 4. Now, some of you are old enough to know that $90,000 a year used to be a lot of money. Not anymore. And here's the point. 140 of the 169 towns in Connecticut have at least 1 out of 5 households, at least 20% of their households at that survival budget level or below. So these are people who, if mom's hours get cut, or the water heater goes, or the carburetor goes, or there's some unplanned expense or loss of income, these people are suddenly down at the food pantry. Maybe they're missing the rent or the mortgage payment for the month, and they are at risk of severe dislocation. So just to keep that in mind, virtually every town in the state has a lot of ALICE households. They're invisible because, like I said, they're getting it done, but they're just barely getting it done, and that should be kept in mind. Where do Scrog towns stand on that? You will see here, Madison, 23% of the households are ALICE households. And again, that may be shocking. Every time I talk to a zoning board or any other group, they look at that number. I remember I talked to the Milford Planning and Zoning Commission a couple of months ago, and they couldn't believe that 31% of their households were ALICE households, but they are. And that's the deal. The last column is the renters and homeowners who are burdened by their housing costs. And as you can see, 46% roughly what the state average is, and 32% exactly what the state average is for renters and homeowners who are burdened by their housing costs. Now, again, burden is a term of art, and you need to understand that. Obviously, if a millionaire, a guy making $1 million a year, is spending 35% of his income, or $350,000 a year, for housing, no one's going to have to pass a plate for him, because he's got $650,000 less left for all the other stuff he needs. But what we're talking about is, imagine a family making median income at $78,000 a year. And if that family is spending $21,000, $22,000, $23,000 on housing, they don't have a lot left over for all the other things. So that's the point here. Moving on, this is the general breakdown of homeowners and renters in the state. About 2/3 of the households own, and about 1/3 rent, just so you understand that. And these are some of the statistics I already talked about. Sarah and Heather have this PowerPoint, and I'm sure you can make it available to people, post it on the website, whatever you want to do. But here it is. Here's a little more housing data. This is the racial breakdowns for the towns in the region, and the single family and multifamily. As you can see, Madison is about 93% single family homes. So important to keep that in mind. So how can you bring prices down? Well, more supply. Anyone who's taken Economics 101 knows that. The idea is, Mark Twain said, invest in land because God's not making any more. Actually, that's not true. Towns can make more land, in effect, by building up. Now, building up is not going to work in certain places. Going up 2, 3, even 4 stories doesn't work in a lot of locations in suburban towns, but it can work in some locations, town centers, along commercial strips, like I said, near the train station, other places. Materials, labor, and land are the 3 key components to building. Materials and labor cost virtually the same, whether you're building homes for rich or poor people. So land is really the variable that changes a little. Unfortunately, a lot of affordable housing gets built on that crummy piece of land that the state has given to the town that no one wants to build anything on, or some vacant property or for sale property. I'll tell you in a minute about some other ideas that some towns are using. Like I say, density is tolerable and even advantageous in some places, but affordability is not as valuable if you build it in places that are far away from services, jobs, transportation, all the things that people need. If some guy has to buy a $500 clunker that gets 8 miles to the gallon and the carburetor breaks every other week, have you really done him a favor by building him an affordable home, far away from everything? Maybe, but maybe not. And also, we know if we build housing that's close in, you reduce sprawl and auto emissions, etc. Making progress, like I say, you guys are doing it all the right way. This forum is great. Continuing to have forums and conversation and communicating and sharing what you all are learning with people is important. A lot of the conversations are valuable at a hearing, but a lot of them are important in Isle to the Stop and Shop when you run into somebody on Saturday, or along the sidelines of the soccer game. That's where these conversations happen. You have a housing committee, that's great. Like I said, the town forums are important. One word about the survey. I know that Madison did very, very well because Sarah and others on the committee did a great job getting the survey out. I'm not sure that survey will give you all the information you need, and you shouldn't feel that you are limited. You can do another survey after the first of the year, maybe in January or February, and with questions that are more particular to Madison's interest and can focus on, more potential locations in Madison and get at what people need to know. And there are other tools you can use. I'm happy to talk to you about how to create slideshows and videos and other tools that you can use. Again, making progress requires combating myths and misconceptions. I'll talk about one example of that in a minute. But the things that people say at public hearings that affordable mixed income housing are going to reduce property values, it's just not true. Research has shown it doesn't do that. Now, I understand people think that affordable and mixed income housing is going to be, 20-story high rises like Pruitt Igoe or Father Panic Village, and it's going to be built with cinder block, and it's going to have graffiti on the walls and used syringes on the ground and bullets flying through the air and whatever else they believe. But it's really not the case. And I'm going to show you about 10 photos in a minute that show that, affordable housing is beautiful and it can be built to fit the surroundings. So it really, the research shows it doesn't lower neighboring property values. It also does not bring school costs. We'll talk about that in a minute. And in terms of crime and other neighborhood quality, again, I'll show you pictures. The police are not at these places every night. It's just not true. So here are some examples in a minute, but here's the public school age thing. Rutgers did a study, and I have other studies which I can send you, of Connecticut about 15 years ago. They did it for every state in the nation. And basically, they looked at regular census data to see the number of actual school children that occurred in 1, 2, and 3 bedroom multifamily units. And this is what they found. And basically, anecdotal data and other studies since have borne this out. In other words, in a 1-bedroom multifamily unit, you get 0.04 children, or in other words, 4 children for every 100 101-bedroom units. And that stands to reason, because when you think about it, what parent is going to move into a 1-bedroom unit with a child? Very, very seldom happens. 2-bedroom, 1 out of 4, 0.27. And again, that stands to reason, because 2 bedrooms are going to be for 2 singles sharing, or a young couple who wants a 2nd bedroom for an office, or grandma who wants a 2nd bedroom for when the grandkids come. 1 out of 4 times it's going to be a parent with a child. 3-bedroom units, you start to get a few more children. And again, that not as many as you think. The other thing to keep in mind, and Fairfield did this study, and again, you can get that from Mark Barnhart in Fairfield, and Wallingford's done it in a bunch of places that have had multifamily housing developments. You just don't get that many school children. But here's the real point. The research has shown that, UMass did this, that school budgets are really not sensitive to enrollment. They're sensitive to labor and energy and healthcare costs. And a lot of people believe that if the school budget's $1,000 and you have 10 kids in the school, that it costs you $100 to educate every kid, and that every time you get another kid, it's going to cost you another $100. It's just not true. And the point is, all of us are probably sitting in rooms now where you could sit 3 or 4 more people, and it's going to cost you the same for heat and light. So it's only when you have to add a modular classroom or a teacher or a whole school that increased enrollment is going to cost you a lot more money. The other point is that the Connecticut State Data Center and OPM have pointed out that most districts in the state, I don't know the numbers for Madison, but most districts in the state are seeing flatter declining enrollments just demographically between now and 2030. So even if you got more kids because you created some housing, you probably have room in your classrooms for them. So that's really the point. And I know that people believe that, and I know they're worried about that. And I understand why they're worried about that. You don't want your school costs to go up and your mill rate to go up, and lose honors and AP classes and all that, but it's just not really something to worry about. Okay. Like I said, impact on property values, there are these and other studies, and we can get those to you as well. Here are some photos rather of other towns, upper middle class and middle class towns that have done some beautiful housing. This is New Canaan. The Housing Authority there has done great work. They've done 1 and 2 bedroom units here. About 30% of these units are income restricted. And as you can see, they have terraces. They're beautiful. They're really nicely designed. This is Avon. This was on an old industrial site. 30% of these units are income restricted. These are 1s, 2s, and 3s. This photo was taken last year. This was built 15 years ago. As you can see, as I said, no graffiti. The cops aren't there tonight. It's really a wonderful place to live. This is Stonington. Neighborhood Works New Horizons built this right on Route 1. It's on a bus line. It's in the Pawcatuck section of town. Again, 30% of these units are income restricted. They work with the fire department, the police department to make sure they can get the fire engines in there. And it's great. And again, just a quick note about politics. A lot of people think, well, only towns that have Democratic leadership put up and build and allow the creation of income restricted and affordable housing. It's really not true. What I've seen across the spectrum is that as many towns with Republican leadership as Democratic leadership do this, because quite frankly, as Fiorello LaGuardia used to say, there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage. Whether you're Democratic or Republican first selectman, you know that people need an affordable place to live. And Republican and Democratic first selectmen have been terrific on this because they understand that housing can be created and it can be great and fit the surroundings and meet the town's needs. Here's another example, Farmington. This was built by Metro Realty. This is near the Yukon Health Center and Carrier Air Conditioning. These are really, really nice duplexes with patios. And again, this was built 20 years ago and it still looks great. This photo was taken 2 years ago. This is in Brookfield. They had a huge parcel in Brookfield, and you can see that the topography lent itself to going up even 4 stories in some cases. Not going to work in some places, but again, really nicely designed and patios and really beautiful housing. And these are 1, 2s, and 3s. And again, I think only 20% of these units were income restricted. Darien, this is Garden Homes. Garden Homes took an old nursing home. That's what this is. But the footprint allowed the creation of really adorable 1 and 2 bedroom units. I visited some people in there. It's a really nice job and a good example of adapted reuse. This is South Windsor, where they built affordable elderly townhouses. Unfortunately, these were built about 30 years ago, and I'm not sure that all the bedrooms are on the first floor. So for elderly people, that's a consideration, but these have worked well. Again, I'm not sure if you're 80, 85 years old, you want to be walking up steps, but that's something to think about. These did go up steps. This is Fairfield. They built these. This was also by Garden Homes, new construction right on the Bridgeport line up against I-95. So a good place, close to transit, close to the highway. And again, not the most beautiful, but not terrible and really well done. This is a very interesting development in Wallingford along the Merritt Parkway near the Oakdale Theater. These are freestanding condos. So the people who buy these are ownership units, about 84 of them, about a third, 30% are income restricted for people at 60 and 80% of median income. The owners get to control about 8 feet radius around the house so that they can put their own landscaping in. These were built about 20 years ago. And again, this is a recent photo. It's a great community and it's worked out very, very well. Bottom line then, you are, when you create housing in a great town like Madison, you're allowing people to live in a great school district. Heather Schwartz from Rand Corporation did a study about 10 years ago that showed that, no surprise, children who get to live in a good school district see their reading and math scores go up. And that's just what happened in Montgomery County, Maryland, where she did the study. The other issue, Richard Rothstein wrote, some of you know, The Color of Law, and he pointed out that for those people who were not, principally Black people, were not allowed to buy homes after World War II because the FHA did not allow it, they have not accrued wealth. But for the middle class in this country, if you can buy a home, you can accrue wealth, and that can pay for college educations and starting a business and invest in the stock market. So, I would not recommend that you dispense with the idea of affordable home ownership and building some homes for ownership that are income restricted in your town. It's something to consider. Again, so your town has to ask, are your residents burdened by housing costs? Do you have the range of supply you need? What else do you need? And what resources can you offer to really make this work? Put it near transit, put it near services. And here's some other questions. We don't have to go through all this now. I don't want to take too much longer, but the town can look at this, and I'm happy to come back and you guys can discuss it themselves. But here's some really good questions for you to ask yourselves and to discuss as a community. One I did want to point out here at the end, and it is this. A lot of towns say, well, we're built out. Well, I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as being built out. If there was such a thing, you'd never see a crane in Manhattan. Properties get repurposed. And a lot of towns are beginning to understand what cities have understood for decades and even centuries. Cities have redevelopment authorities. They understand that they can take a property that maybe had been used for one purpose and repurpose it. And in this case, some towns, I know one, I can't disclose, is looking at a strip mall, an 8-store strip mall on a bus route, a commercial strip, where 4 of the storefronts are vacant. And they're talking to the owner of the strip mall. And they're saying, look, when the leases are up on the other 4, do you think you might want to allow us to rezone this from multifamily housing? Because it's a great spot for it. He's considering this. But the point is, if they did that, he'd probably get a lot for that property. And maybe those businesses could move. Again, it's not the easiest decision. But the point is, just because it's a strip mall there now, or anything there now, doesn't mean it has to be that way. So you don't need to just look at the usual suspects, which are the vacant or for sale properties. You can walk up to property owners and say, is your property for sale? And they say no. You say, well, what if we rezoned it for multifamily housing? You get twice as much for it. And the guy might still say no, but he might also say, well, I was thinking of retiring next year, or I could move my business and my customers would still find me. So again, these are ideas that towns are thinking about. So again, please keep that in mind. And again, these are principles to consider. Do you want to let others into your town? Do you think it's important for your municipal workers to live here? Do you want the jobs in the town to be held by those people? Here's my contact information. I'm happy to talk to anybody who calls me. I'm happy to help and answer any of your questions. But for me, that's it. And now I'll turn it back over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And just in the interest of time, we're going to hold questions, as I said. But that was really a helpful start. And I know some of you have asked for the PowerPoint presentation. So if you want it, just make sure you chat with me and I'll make sure that we get it to you. I do just want to, I know some people want to leave for a meeting at 7. And right now I just want to turn to Elaine Reitman, and right after her will be Crystal DePietro, and they don't have as long a presentation as David, but Elaine is going to just let you know what we have here in Madison. Elaine is the president of Concord Meadows, which is senior and disabled housing, and she will tell you more about that. Elaine has been a resident of Madison since 1994. Before that, she lived in Guilford since 1974. And she has had a career in many things: marketing research, advertising, and branding. And right now she in addition to Concord Meadows, for the past 15 years, she's been the Madison and Guilford coordinator for the AARP tax aid program that provides free income tax preparation to nearly 500 low and middle income residents, mostly seniors in these surrounding towns. So Elaine is going to talk to you a little bit about what Concord Meadows is. She got involved in Concord Meadows through Temple Beth Tikva. When somebody said, somebody's leaving, can you take a spot? It really won't be a very big commitment. And the next thing you know, a few years later, she was the president and has been ever since, and doing really a wonderful job over there. So Elaine, we're happy to have you, and happy to have you talk a little bit about Concord Meadows and what you see there and what you see the need is in Madison.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you for asking me to, give a presentation or an introduction to Concord Meadows. Concord Meadows is really a very different kind of housing than David's presentation was talking about. Concord Meadows was designed as an affordable elderly housing community, mostly for seniors over 62, with the addition of people who are considered disabled. And they are the only residents that are permitted to live there. Concord Meadows is on Woodland Road. People driving by, many people don't know it exists there because it looks as if it's just another rental or condo community. So if you approach the bridge to Fort Path Road, you will see Concord Meadows on the right if you're coming from town. And we now have 12 residential buildings with 90 units. We have somewhat over about 100 residents at any one time. with a robust waiting list. We currently have, and this is as of last night, we have 211 people on our waiting list right now. We always maintain a robust waiting list. So, obviously the need is there. Concord Meadows, even though it's a restricted housing development, probably represents over 90% of the affordable housing right now in the town of Madison. There isn't very much at all for anybody else, for younger people, for families, or for anyone else. Concord Meadows is run by a not-for-profit corporation that was founded in 1973 when representatives of various religious organizations in town, 4 of the churches and Temple Beth Tikva, later joined by St. Margaret's, got together recognizing the need for this kind of housing, particularly for seniors at the time, and with seed money from their respective organizations, formed this corporation called Madison Interfaith Residential Community to develop the concept, the planning, and apply for the financing, which was obtained from the federal government, rural development, USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. So we don't operate under HUD, we operate under USDA, but we operate under the same regulations as a HUD project does. And right now, our funding, to build the project, they obtained initially a mortgage of somewhat over $1.5 billion, a 50-year low interest mortgage to build 9 units. And they bought a piece of property, 13 acres of land at Woodland and Copps Road in 1976. And they obtained the mortgages, and the buildings were initially occupied in 1977. And actually, that was the first affordable housing in Madison at that time. In approximately 1990, the need was was still substantial. And they obtained an additional mortgage and were able to build 3 more buildings. So now there are a total of 12 buildings. And those buildings were opened in early 1992, another $1.5 million mortgage. And again, we still have a long waiting list. Rentals are limited, as David mentioned, according to HUD rules, no more than 30% of a household's income, including a utility allowance. So the base rate, what we call the nominal rate for people, is $595 to $825 a month. But 71 residents of the complex receive subsidies. So some people could pay, no more than for example, $100 a month in rent to live there, because then their utility allowances is taken into account. So the largest majority of residents at Concord Meadows pay very, very little in rent. I don't think there's anything else in town, even at the full note rate, that matches what you can get at Concord Meadows. We are run by a board of directors. We have 12 to 15 board members at any time. Originally, the board members were nominated by the respective religious organizations, but over time this has been expanded, and we now look for all interested community members to become a part of the board. We put a notice for board members in the local paper, and we periodically, and we have some people who have joined us at this point in time. We have right now 12 board members, so we have some openings if people are interested, and they can contact me if they are interested and see how we operate. We are not connected in any way with the town of Madison. This is an independent, not-for-profit corporation. We pay real estate taxes, although we do enjoy a tax abatement on our taxes. Requests for applications can go to our property management company. The day-to-day management of the company of the complex is Wildwood Management Company, who we think does a very good job maintaining the complex. It's very attractive. It's well maintained. Over the past 3 years, we were able to obtain nearly $2.5 million in grants that are enabling us to completely change out and install a new triple pane windows in every unit. We have just completed installing mini splits, what are called mini splits in each unit to lower energy costs for and make people more comfortable. We've gotten rid of all window air conditioning units, and everything is going to be run all off of this mini split unit, which provides both heating and air conditioning to everybody. So we are finishing up our second block grant. Again, money came from the federal government through the state of Connecticut, and based on proposals we submitted, we were awarded 2 of these grants. Of course, we're always looking for additional funding to meet other needs, but we were very pleased to be able to do this. Unless people have additional questions about Concord Meadows, I think that's just a brief summary of who we are and and what we do. So thank you for allowing me to make that information available.
Thank you, Elaine. And when you look back on David's statistics about, the affordable housing in Madison, it's mostly Concord Meadows that is that statistic. We have some things happening now, but that is really, that's 90 units of our, I think it's 130 units. So thank you, Elaine. I want to turn lastly to Crystal DePietro. Crystal is on this committee, as I mentioned, as a liaison to Madison Youth and Family Services, and she is the social services coordinator there. Crystal has a BA in criminal justice, but she's been working in the social services for more than a decade, doing group homes, working for municipalities, and her job is really breaking down barriers and making people feel comfortable coming to see her. If she looks familiar to you on the side doing all of this, she also is a wonderful director. And some of us have been lucky enough to have kids who have been in plays with Crystal. She's multi-talented, and today she's going to tell you about the families she works with that are here in Madison that could benefit from affordable housing and who are those rent burdened people that David Fink was talking about. Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you, Sarah. A couple things just want to say off the bat. David, thank you so much. Your presentation was so poignant, and a lot of the things that David said are just so spot on to the people that we already work with. And then Elaine, also so many of our clients are connected with Concord, and we are so grateful for that housing that already exists in our community. Without it, most of the people who are sort of rent burdened wouldn't have an opportunity to be here. So it really is very beneficial to have that amazing complex here. So again, I'm the social services coordinator for Madison. I work with the residents under 65. I'm here today to present not only for myself, but I'm going to be presenting for the seniors, for Heather as well. I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the work we do to assist families in difficult positions. I will keep it very brief, and I'm going to read so that I do keep it brief. I'd like to share with you some statistics that give a brief overview of some of the work we do to assist families in difficult spots. I will say this, that since the start of the pandemic, there's been an increase for the need of assistance. At the start of 2020, we had 94 active families that received one-time assistance in the previous year or participated in some of our programs. If you fast forward to January 2021, that number jumped to almost 178. And now in almost 2022, we have 200 active families. So these are not numbers of clients, these are numbers of families that we serve. Among those clients, just in the last, I'd say, 2 to 3 months, I have spoken with 5 families specifically who've been negatively impacted by the housing crisis. 3 who've been forced to move out of the community because of not being able to afford housing, and 2 whose landlords are planning on selling because of the housing market currently and cannot find an alternative in our community. Along with this snapshot, there are some more specific statistics that support the ever-growing need for our clients. So this year, 23 renters under 65 qualified for renter's rebate because of disability. 55 students received back to school supplies and gift cards. 72 students received our Be Cool for School gift cards to help ease them back into in-person learning. We received COVID funds with the assistance of N2N that helped over 85 households, totaling in $110,000 during COVID. Last year, we had 41 energy assistance applications. Currently, today, we are at 30, and we know that we have many more coming still, and the season has many more months to it. And 65 children will receive holiday gift support from our donors, and 67 will receive Blizzard of Giving gift cards, and at least 54 for Toys for Tots. Among the seniors, 65 and older, 73 individuals have received energy assistance. Heather is much quicker than I am. 49 have qualified for renter's rebate this year, and total people who received tax relief is 337, and 38 receiving a total tax freeze. And then additionally, 153 who received the state circuit breakers program. While we cannot correlate these numbers to those struggling very specifically with affordable housing, it is safe to say that anyone who's currently a client and receives any of our services are financially strapped and would greatly benefit from any resources in the community, including rentals. We're looking forward to the hopeful development of more affordable housing to help our clients stay in Madison and feel supported by our community. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Crystal. I really appreciate it. So I'm mindful of the time, but I would like to open it up to questions. And you're welcome to raise your hand if you know how to do that on Zoom. If not, you can just raise your hand like we used to do, and we'll call on you. Because of the time, we'll just ask that you keep it to questions as opposed to statements. Although I do want to say that we will have in the next few months some forums where we will invite you to just bring your statements and say what you're thinking about this all. So with that, does anyone have questions for any of the panelists? I see a hand clap oh, okay, all right, I see some, Catherine Ferguson. And you're muted.
Thank you. Are we legally required to have affordable housing in town, and how much have we got it? How much will we need to increase it in order to be legal?
That's a great question. David, do you want to answer that?
Sure. You're not legally required to have any housing in town. There is a state statute, chapter 830G, which says that if less than 10% of the housing stock in town is not reserved for people at lower incomes, 80 or 60% of median income, then a developer can come into the town, purchase a piece of property, and build mixed income housing. At least 30% of the units have to be income restricted, and the burden of proof is on the town to stop that developer. The town would have to show that there would be significant impacts on public health or safety. Otherwise, the developer could override the local zoning and the town could not stop him. I don't remember exactly what the percentage is in Madison, but I believe it's substantially lower than 10%. So point being that, in answer to your question, under the 830G statute, a developer could come into town and likely create income restricted housing without the town being able to stop him or her.
And I will just say, some people have jumped off for the P and Z meeting where where one of those applications is in front of the planning and zoning. And so I think we are at just over 1% is where we are right now. And so the idea of doing this is for Madison to think about how it wants to have affordable housing and what it wants it to look like. Did I see other hands? Nancy Mann, did you have a question? Yeah.
I was the clap hand. I had the same question in terms of the standing of the housing that we do have available right now. So it's been answered. Thank you.
Great. Other questions? You're a quiet and very well-mannered group. Maybe that's just how you all appear on Zoom. I'm not sure.
Sarah, Susan Glantz has a question. Her hand's raised.
Sorry, Susan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had thought that there was some movement by the governor or the legislature or something to require the towns to add more affordable housing. Do I have that wrong?
You have it partially correct. That the legislature passed a statute 2 years ago that said that by the end of June 2022, or roughly a little more than 6 months from now, towns in the state must create affordable housing plans and then revise them every 5 years. The statute is silent on exactly what has to be in that plan, and to be quite honest with you, there are no teeth in the statute that would in any way penalize any town that did not create a plan. Having said that, Madison, as Sarah pointed out earlier, is part of the South Central Region Council of Governments, which is New Haven and the 14 towns around it. And under an agreement of all the mayors and first selectmen in the region, SCROG has appointed or hired a firm called RKG Associates, which is based in Boston, that is working with each town to create individual housing plans for each town. So in other words, SCROG is not creating Madison's plan. RKG is not creating Madison's plan. Madison is creating Madison's plan. And I think your housing committee is doing the work to do that. The point is that this forum, future town discussions, and discussions with RKG, I think the first one Madison has is already scheduled for next month. There will be town input to create the plan for Madison. So this is the opportunity for residents in the next couple of months to really put their imprimatur on the town's housing plan. So that's the requirement. There's no requirement that the town has to create any amount of affordable housing, but there is a requirement to create a plan.
Thanks, David. And I will just assure people that we are going to have a plan in the town of Madison by June of 2022, because that's what this committee is charged with doing. And David is right that SCROG is helping us out with that plan. But in addition, Madison really felt like it wanted to have a very individualized plan for Madison. And so we have some, the committee is working with our own people to sort of get the plan together. And that's what all of these informational sessions are towards, having a plan that will actually make some sense, and that will be something that the town of Madison, has looked at, has gotten to weigh in on, and something that we feel proud of building. Does anyone else have a question?
Sarah, Erin Duquesne has her hand raised.
Okay, and then I see Al after that. So Erin, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for David. David, thank you so much for coming tonight and giving us so much good information. And you certainly have provided a lot of compelling reasons why affordable housing is important. I was wondering about what you've seen in other towns as far as some of the biggest challenges for creating affordable housing, and how have towns like Avon and Stonington, Farmington and Fairfield all overcome some of those challenges?
Great question. The way they've overcome it is, the two basic points. The location of the housing is really all important. Most of the acrimonious public hearings are when people think that you're going to ruin their neighborhood or endanger them or mess up the traffic patterns or that sort of thing. So if you can find a location that people agree upon, and that gets to the idea of choices and coming up with a bunch of alternatives, that's one good way to do that. The other thing is that there has to be a conversation. Most towns that have succeeded here have tried to have a conversation where you answer everyone's questions. And like I said, people are going to have a lot of questions, and people are going to have legitimate fears. And we may, in private, say to each other, well, that's a really silly thing to be afraid of. Well, not really. It's important for people's questions to be answered. And the best example, I think the poster child for this is Old Saybrook. About 8 years ago, when Mike Pace was the first selectman in Old Saybrook, he used to tell the story about how he was driving to work in the morning and he'd see women in nurses and maids uniforms standing at the bus stop with little kids outside single room occupancy hotels that are used really by tourists only in season, but in the off season were being lived in by families. And he realized, well, holy mackerel, these parents are cooking on a hot plate for little kids, and these families are essentially homeless. And so he decided he was going to make a push for this. And so over the course of 3 or 4 years, it was the local United Way, the largest congregations in town, the state rep, a bunch of people, the superintendent of schools, they got together and they had meetings and they talked and they had forums. And I wasn't even a principal in this effort, and I was down in Old Saybrook 5 or 6 times talking to them. Bottom line, the first affordable housing proposal that came up, there was one hand raised at the public hearing, and that was somebody who said they supported it. There were no objections, but it took 4 or 5 years of discussion about this. And then the next one was a developer who came in and, like I said, wanted to put 186 units next to the train station. So, and again, no opposition. If you can disabuse people of their fears, and their fears are legitimate, they may not be based in fact, but they're still legitimate. And you have to talk to people about that. So having a good town discussion is number one. And finding the right place where people are not going to freak out about it is number two, I think.
Thanks, David. Al, I think you had a question.
Sarah, my question is for you. How can concerned citizens of Madison be of help to your committee?
That's a great question, Al. And I probably need to think about it a little bit. But I would say at the very least, if you're interested, we meet every other Friday. So we have a meeting tomorrow. We need to make our 2022 schedule, but we will be posting that, and anybody is welcome to come to those meetings. And really we will be doing another survey. We really want to hear from people. And we want to hear people's thoughts and even opposition. What do you not want to see? And not only what you do want to see, but it's really I find a lot of times you don't know what people don't want in Madison until something is proposed and towards the end. And our goal here is to make something that everybody feels good about, and to make sure that everybody understands the need that David just talked about, the need that Crystal and Elaine know very well from their jobs. So I think if you're interested in this effort, the first step would be contacting me or any member of the committee, because this is a work in progress right now. And so hearing from you will only help. Did I miss another hand, Heather?
Sarah, there's a question in the chat. When will there be a list of potential sites?
So that's a very good question. And I'm not sure that I have an answer to that, though I will say that when there is a list of potential sites, that will be put out for everyone. And I think the idea here is less about listing sites as a done deal and more about exploring different options and hearing what people think about the different options. I had a joke for this forum that we should make a list of sites, and then I felt like we'd get lots of people to come to the forum. But the point is that we want people to be thinking about what would be possible, and we do not intend to surprise anyone at the end of the day with a list of sites. I don't know if that's helpful. Any other questions? If there aren't any more questions, I really do want to thank you for coming out for the first of these discussions. It may be that you leave here and then you find that you have some questions. Please feel free to reach out. I have been approached by various people in Madison, and I've been really pleased that they've reached out and that they're thinking about this topic and that they're sharing what they really think. Sorry, I see one more. Is the new development on Bradley Road going to have some affordable units? And the answer to that is no. I'm sorry to say it's not. So with that, I do want to say this has been recorded. We hope to send it out. If you know somebody who missed it, who wanted to see it, we will be posting it in various places. We hope to have a Facebook page yet to come where we will post a lot of this information. And I want to thank you for coming out and thinking about these issues. And I want to thank all of our panelists for helping us start this conversation. This is just our beginning, and we hope to see you all at our next phase, and we will make sure to make everyone know when that's going to be, when we have a next educational forum. So thank you all for coming out, and good night.